This will be a little story about how one of my mentors actually saved my life. I had a few medical issues. One of those was I needed a kidney transplant, and then later on I needed a pancreas transplant. So I had the kidney transplant. It went very successfully. I was very, very lucky. I had an outstanding surgeon. He was really one of the best transplant surgeons in the world. I had it done at UPMC, which at the time was one of the best hospitals to have it at, which, by the way, when I first told Bill Berkley, I reported to Bill at the time. I was the CEO of a company called SDI, and Bill was the chairman of our board and also our majority shareholder. So I called Bill when I found out and told him that I needed an organ transplant, and he had asked me where I was going to have it done. At that time, I was going to have it done in Philadelphia because I was living just north of Philly, and just for me, it made a lot of sense for the convenience. Bill started a company years ago, and today it's an $11 billion insurance company. So he really knows where to have what procedure done. So Bill had told me to take a look at UPMC, which was in Pittsburgh. They were one of the top 3 places in the United States to have a transplant. So I did that. And as soon as I met with the people at UPMC, in fact, I met who eventually became my pancreas transplant surgeon, I knew I was in the right place. So I had the kidney transplant. That went perfectly well. Then I needed the pancreas transplant. Now, pancreas transplants at that time were not very common. UPMC was really outstanding at this, but one time I was traveling with another gentleman to introduce him to some of our customers, and we were in Dallas, Texas at the time, meeting with American Airlines. Well, when we were coming back, the weather was terrible in the Northeast. They canceled a lot of flights. I traveled a lot, so I knew we should just get a hotel room and book a flight for the next morning, which was Saturday, as opposed to running the risk. Now, I flew into Newark because I hate the Philly airport. He flew into Philly. He decided to go ahead, and he got on his plane and got back, but the weather was worse the further north you got, so I stayed overnight in that hotel. Well, at about 3:30 in the morning, my phone rings. Oddly enough, UPMC had a pancreas that was a good match for me. The only issue I had was I had to get back into UPMC by the morning. Well, every organ has a certain lifespan that they have to implant it into your body within, or else it starts to go bad. So I only had a short time frame. So I talked to my ex-wife at the time. She was my wife at the time, but I called her, and she told me to call Bill. And I said, Chris, I'm not going to call Bill. It's like 4:30 in the morning. She goes, well, I'm not telling you what to do, but I would call Bill. So I thought about it, and I called Bill and woke him up for the second time in my lifetime. But he was happy that I called him. He really was thrilled that I called him for this help. So prior to me even calling him, though, I had called all of the airlines to see if there was any way I could get back to Pittsburgh by trains, planes, automobiles, any single way. But because it was a weekend, there are less flights, and there was no way I could get back there in time, which is why I called Bill.